I would go to the what I call the local places, if you know what I mean, and I would build me a little grave, pile up dirt, if you know what I mean, and I'd stick a half a dozen feathers around it. So when the next guy come, there was my mark. He's dead. He ain't dead. I'm trying to keep everybody else out of there. Oh, we were dirty.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsmen Podcast. We're actually back in this room for the second time in about 2 weeks. Here, I was telling Preston earlier, we're here about 2 weeks and a couple $1,000s later because we had to replace all of our audio equipment. We recorded this 2 weeks ago. It didn't take because our audio equipment broke down. But today, I'm excited to say we're with Preston Pittman. Preston, how are you doing?
I'm big, fat, bald, old, ugly. Let me see. Half blind, half crippled, but my tank is still half full.
Hey, it's almost turkey season, too.
I will literally, today is Wednesday. I will leave from here tomorrow afternoon, going over to Beaver Dam Lodge, getting all my stuff laid out, go pick my granddaughters. Miss Taylor from Totes by Taylor's will be beating us there, and we start on the youth season this coming Saturday.
Wow. Dude. Coming up quick, huh?
It's here.
Yeah, it's here, baby. So, man, we had a great discussion last time. We're going to get into kind of your background, your story, how you got into turkey calling. We're going to talk about natural voice calling. We're going to talk about a lot of things, which we talked about already last time, and we lost the whole thing.
Old school turkey hunters.
Old school woodsmanship.
And there's a couple of characters I remember from last time what we were going to talk about, but there's one or two that I don't remember their name exactly, but I know they'll come up in conversation. But Preston, to kind of kick us off, I want you to talk to us a little bit about your upbringing growing up in Mississippi from a woodsmanship standpoint, hunting standpoint, and just spending time outdoors. Like, what was it like as a child growing up with your parents?
Well, one story that they tell on me, of course, I can't remember that whenever I was 3 or 4 months old, something like that. First, let me say this. I come from that time and era to where we didn't have all the mechanical devices that we have now today. You know, you didn't see kids running around, on the blasted cell phones. Not that they don't serve a good purpose, okay? But we spent time together as a family, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And it was Mama and Daddy and Uncle Lewis and Aunt Dovey and Uncle Dutch and Manuel Overstreet. And I mean, it was a family type affair whenever we hunted, we fished, or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. So back to the story, they tell the story that I was somewhere around 3 or 4 months old when my mother, or Mama, as I called her, and my father, the Daddy, was what I called him. Mama starts screaming, and they talk about, here comes Daddy, because they had me in an apple crate on the banks of Black Creek catching red bellies. And that's not a brim. That's not a bluegill. It's a red belly, okay? Catching red bellies. And she sees a snake in an apple crate with me. And Daddy walks over, recognizes it's just, a water snake, flips it out, turns around, go back, and they start fishing again. So that's kind of my background, that I've always been in the great outdoors. Super thankful that I had parents that, took me, our Thanksgivings, our Christmases. One of the two big places that we hunted as a kid was what I always call Camp Shelby, which is south of Hattiesburg, which is where I was born and raised at originally, or DeSoto National Forest. And then my daddy was a pipe fitter plumber. My mother was a hairstylist, which I was in my former life. And long story short, by getting this piece of wood left over from a job, in construction and stuff, we built a camp on Red Creek. Now, when I say a camp, you had to walk down the steps. It was up on stilts, old light poles that Daddy has somehow or another acquired with just scrap wood, and you had to walk down the steps, go between there and the edge or the bank of the creek, And this is how we got our water, pumping it. When you had to go to the bathroom, we didn't have the house out beyond the house where one goes and sits and meditates, but I had the bark worn off where I grabbed a hold of a small tree, and that's where I did my business at. Of course, you had to have a shovel. We dug a hole, buried it, so on and so forth. So that's kind of my upbringing, from the very early days. Had asthma whenever I was a kid, had chronic nosebleeds when I was a kid. Or as I was a little bitty fart is what it broke down to. So baseball, I was into baseball, a little bit, as a kid, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, but was not athletically inclined, didn't have the size, so on, so forth. So hunting and fishing became my life. Who would have known back then it would become my career? So I'm blessed by Lord God Almighty for letting me do what I like, and I like what I do. Millionaire, rich man, never will be. 71, still work every day of my life that I'm physically able to come in here. I showed y'all something when you came in. We might show a little bit later on. As of about 3 days ago, I've learned how to sew. So I'll try and do anything, always have. But that's kind of where it came in at, in the competitive part of the turkey part. I had already killed a few birds. We won't talk too much about my first birds, okay? We'll just stay away from that. In fact, one of them that I killed, I got my rear end tore up. I'm also from that time, instead of go put your nose in the corner, it was bend over and grab your ankles. And I don't have a problem with that. So if you don't like it, sorry. That's just the way I was raised, and it didn't kill me. Where was I headed to with that now?
Well, I want to talk about your upbringing specifically. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, do you remember your very first hunt, like your very first experience on a hunt?
Hunt or kill? Because there's a big difference.
Either one, whichever one comes to mind for you.
What do they call it whenever you go so many years and you broke a law and it's no longer, what is that called? What's that terminology? After so many years after you break a particular law.
Oh, statute of limitations.
I think the statute of limitations has gone away. I'm going to be real honest, okay? I am not proud of this. I do not advocate this because I think of the things that I did whenever I was in my youth, and it's very embarrassing. I'm very ashamed of. And I look at some of the things that I did, just how much one person can affect wildlife. So I am a giant advocator in nonprofit organizations, in hunter safety education, and into the conservation of wildlife. Let's make that true. But here's the truth. My first bird was killed when I was 9 years old. It was out of the back of a red Dodge pick-em-up truck, out of season, in Camp Shelby. I was in the back of the truck. We come around a curve trying to hit the dogs off, and there's a bunch of turkeys in the road. And if you don't think a 9-year-old kid can't unload and get a slug and a number 5 shot out about that quick, you're wrong. And I killed a jake. When Daddy stopped the truck, about the second thing he said was bend over, and he tore my butt up with a switch. And I had killed my first bird. Like I said, I'm not proud of it at all. My first real turkey, okay, would have been when I was about 10 or 11 years old, with that same little 410 single barrel with number 5 shot in it. Remember I mentioned we had a camp on Red Creek. I had my boundaries. Now, most people would not even think about turning a 10, 11-year-old kid loose in the woods by themselves. Well, I got to backdate a little bit. I started shooting a gun when I was 5, okay? In fact, I'm not shooting you an ugly signal. That's my trigger finger, simply because I couldn't reach the trigger with my trigger finger. I'd have to do this to pull the trigger. So I adapted and used my middle finger as my trigger finger.
A friend of mine did the same thing.
I still do it today.
Mm-hmm.
It's instinct. But I had my boundaries at the camp. The first sandbar, I couldn't go past it. The first big slough, B&B Palace, which was another camp that was there. That was my block of woods, if you know what I mean. In fact, this bird will probably be in the book. The first year, he whooped my rear end. Of course, my father and my mother were not turkey hunters. They were deer, quail, rabbit, squirrel, even actually had some wild hogs back then at Red Creek. And how do you say he couldn't educate me, if you know what I mean? But God, at the base foundation I was getting then and didn't realize it until later years, learning how to read the lay of the land, the territory, and even listening to other animals and stuff. You don't realize all that stuff a lot of times until you become what I call of age. So I think I was around, I know I messed with that bird for 1 year, maybe 2 years, trying to kill him. And when I finally figured him out, that bird had a broke wing. And what he would do is he might, about every third day, would he gobble on the roost. And here was what I found out why. He had the broke wing. And he had it worked out to where there was like a tree that had been blown over that was lodged in another tree. And he could literally, because he couldn't fly, he would literally walk up that tree and limb hop to where he got safe at, and then limb hop coming down and walk down the tree to the ground. And that's when he would gobble. And if he did not see a hen, we didn't have decoys back then. If he did not see a hen, he would not come. Did I ambush him? You call it what you want to. I call it figuring him out. Because there was one afternoon I was sitting within 10 yards of where he was going to hop up on that limb. But that's what I call woodsmanship. That's what people still this day and time don't get. And that is the woodsmanship part of it, about putting those pieces of puzzle together. Was I calling? Yeah, I was clucking and purring with my natural voice and soft yipping, from time to time. But I had him figured out. And it took a couple of years to figure him out, even though I was a kid. But that first lesson, that first real lesson, has taught me so much to pay attention to Mother Nature, because Mother Nature is talking to you if you'll just hear it.
And we're going to talk a lot about that. So you said you're 71 years old. So
Yes.
at what year roughly was that? I'm not good at math.
Oh, God, I'm dyslexic. I ain't got that many fingers and toes. Well, let's just round it. Let's say 10. Let's just say 10 years old. Or 10 to 70. That's 60 years ago. So 60 from 2025 is what?
That's a great. What year were you born?
On November the 28th of 1953, I was hatched. When I popped out of my mama and that baby doctor grabbed me by my hind legs and spanked me on the hiney, is what I did, and I've been doing it ever since anyway.
So that's 1965 would be
Okay.
60 years.
So there you go.
Okay, so
There weren't no turkeys back then, hardly.
I was going to ask about that. So your dad's generation, what level of woodsmanship did those guys have, and what did they like to do? Because they weren't turkey hunting.
Oh. Well, now, when you found, even from the standpoint of deer hunting, even from the standpoint of squirrel hunting, even from the standpoint of rabbit hunting, take any species of any game whatsoever, they knew feeding areas. They knew travel zones. They knew bedding areas. even in dog hunting, okay? I can go back to the Shelby days and here again, Red Creek days. Go get by the old oak tree that's got the squirrel nest that's hanging down from it. They knew where to go to, and it was all about that woodsmanship and animals being redundant, which a lot of people going to fuss at me on this, but I look at things like this. Who did you learn from?
My uncles.
And your mom and your dad and your granddad.
Oh, yeah, just for anything.
And so on and so on and so forth. Did you not pick up some of their traits?
Absolutely.
Bam. Wildlife is the same way. I go so far back, I can remember my $19.95 Shakespeare recurve bow from Autolet. I thought I had died and gone to heaven when I saw the first Baker death trap tree stand where you bear hugged the tree and lifted it up. And if you moved just the wrong way, it was all the way down. Deer never looked up. Y'all too young for this. It was never none of this. Now, them big old long-nosed, big-headed does are going, baby, you better look up something up there is going to stick you. You better be careful. And these traits that are handed down, scrapes, these are just good examples. Strut zones, I can say the same thing. What one animal does, especially during, quote, breeding season, I can promise you that as long as the territory and the terrain does not change, people say, well, you're crazy. Okay, fine. Don't you go back to the same bush, the same spot, the same logging road every year, and there's a scrape up underneath it. Oh, I killed it. No, you didn't, because there's always somebody else there. And it's likewise patterns that once you, and I can't teach you that. Eddie can't teach you that. I mean, Bob can't teach you that. You can't. It's something that you've got to open up your mind and always realize. I'm 71. I'm going to learn something this year. I do not know it all. And that's the beauty, especially of turkey hunting, is I'm going to learn something. It might be something what not to do. The day that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I got this figured out, I'm fixing to put a load of Apex in his face. He makes a fool out of you. And what does it do? That's an education is what it is.
Speak about education. I want to get into discussing how you got introduced to turkey hunters as a teenager. From the calling aspect and some of those stories from some of those guys. And we actually have one of those guys.
Oh, you have
on
my
the
hero
wall,
up there. Yes, you do.
Jack Dudley. But walk us through that. Like, what was that experience like, kind of starting to meet guys like that?
Here again, we go back to family oriented. Carthage, Mississippi had a big 4th of July celebration, to where you got half a chicken and slaw and beans, French fries, whatever, for $3 to $5, and they had the state championship turkey calling contest, the state championship duck calling, owl hooting, archery, skeet shoot, you name it, hatchet blowing, grease pole calling contest, kids catching grease pigs, good old time country days. But it was the state championship turkey calling. And, of course, my feet were wet then, a little bit. They were damp, with turkey hunting. And my parents took it to me. In fact, that first year, I won the fishing rodeo. And then as they were presenting me the plaque on the stage, they found out I was a year too old. And I had to give the plaque back, which was fine. You know what I mean? Heck, I got to catch fish that day. That's all that mattered. You know what I mean? But I met a gentleman by the name of Jack Dudley. Jack Dudley at that time, and he's dead and gone now, and I'm sorry to say that. He was strictly a natural voice caller. Okay? And by the end of the first day, I was 12, 13, whatever it was, somewhere in that range bracket. I was kind of like that leech. I had attached myself to him. And, how do you do this? How do you do that? So on, and so forth. I was squeaking a little bit with my natural voice. And one day he refined me out and he said, son, you're a natural. Can't everybody do this? And he said, keep working at it. And then Jack was probably prior to Ben Roger Lee by a year or two as far as traveling, but he was strictly locally, if you know what I mean. The state of Mississippi, he might have tipped into Alabama a little bit and would go to like a gun and reel sportsman's club that we were in and do a little talk, a little 30-minute talk talking about turkey calling and stuff like that. I was very fortunate that my parents would take me to those. And I was a sponge is what I was. And then finally got it to the point to where, once a month or so, I had 5 minutes on long distance. Y'all don't know what that is. The circle dial that I was limited to, and I bugged the ever living snot out of him. And 15 years old, that became an annual event that we went to. 15 now, I've killed some birds. Most of them's beards about that long, and that was all legal back then. I go back, and Jack looks at me, and he said, "Son, you're there." I said, "Sir?" He said, "You're there. I want to see you on this stage next year." I said, "Mr. Dudley, I can't beat you." He said, "Well, I'm retiring regardless." But he said, "You're there. I want to see you on this stage." At 16, I walked up on the stage, and I won my first Mississippi State Championship. We didn't have divisions back then. So, heck, I think I was about the only kid, 16-year-old competing back then. And I won the state championship. And then it was just like pouring gasoline onto a fire. That became my sport. That was my football. That was my basketball. That was my baseball. That was my sport. And then it was every contest that I could find, that I could get into, that I could afford to go to. And the whole goal was, there was no money in it back then. I mean, the richest calling contest was in Yellville, Arkansas, the national championship. And that was $300 if you won. But back then I could take that $300 and that paid for gas, food, and lodging. So it was a break even. I might even make $50 off of it. Most of the time then it was a gun and a plaque, or a gun and a trophy is the best that you could hope for. I did win a chainsaw or two. And the goal was win a gun, take it to the pawn shop, pawn it, get $100. I got the money to go to another one, if you know what I mean. And then it developed from there into traveling and doing seminars. Of course, now years are going by and I'm getting experience. Thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't know crap back then. I'm sorry. Thought I did. To me, sorry guys and gals, to me, you are not a turkey hunter. I didn't say caller. You are not a turkey hunter until you have a minimum of 20 years in the woods. That's just, it takes it. Sorry. It takes it. And there is a big difference between hunting and calling. My philosophy is real simple. I do not go in the woods to call a turkey. I go in the woods to hunt a turkey. While I am hunting that bird, I will use my calling ability. Don't ask me to start trying to break that down, because y'all will learn. You will learn.
Also, I want to talk a little bit more about some of these guys that you had met back then, turkey hunters. But before, you've mentioned this to us before, and I wanted to kind of bring it back up. What characteristics of a turkey hunter makes you worried if they have access to your neighboring property or your property?
Repeat that question. I'm gonna think about it. I think I know what you said. I want you to.
I'm trying to throw you a softball here. What characteristics of a turkey hunter makes you worried about him killing your birds?
I don't want nobody messing with my birds. I'll tell you real quick. A true, unlike what we see on TV, and I'm sorry, but unlike what we hear on podcast, a true turkey hunter. I'm trying to remember his name. Ken. Gosh, dog it. He's from Louisiana. Turkey hunting is a one-person sport. It is you and him. how can I take you or him in the woods and communicate with y'all while I'm trying to figure out what's going on, what's going through my head, and what my next move is going to be? It's impossible, okay? Because I never know what I'm going to do. Contrary to some of the popular belief, a wild turkey can remember certain things. You can, what we call, educate a bird. I don't want nobody else in there educating my birds. Now, this is old school philosophy. I have a whole new philosophy now, which is, because we're losing so many hunters, which is pass it on. Back then, Preston, you hear any birds? No, I just lied. Preston, I know good and well there's a bird in there behind that swamp. Nah, he was across the road about a half a mile up the road. He's right there behind the swamp. I didn't want nobody else in there. I didn't want them calling to the bird. I didn't want them spooking the bird. I didn't want them educating that turkey. And still right now today, if I had a particular bird that I was messing with, and you can ask some of the guys out at Aislinn Sportsman's Club, because we've gotten some new members in it to the turkey hunters, where the birds at? We ain't got no turkeys. Oh, we got buzzards. What? What's that I see? I don't know what you're seeing. You must be seeing stuff. I still have a tendency to lean that way. I'm sorry. Old ways are still hard to get rid of, if you know what I mean. I just don't want anybody else messing with the birds that I'm going to be messing with. You know.
And I probably should. No, that's a really good answer.
I had to do that in the old days.
Absolutely. Well, that's like, I almost like say the common trait of old school turkey hunters. You know, keep cards super close to your chest, and you're not giving anybody anything.
Oh.
But what I was trying to get at is the combination of knowing your land with woodsmanship.
Oh God.
And how, from a turkey hunting perspective, like that's like when you become, I'm not going to say a master, but like you really are super effective when you have that combination of knowledge of your landscape, the woodsmanship skills, and just a little bit of calling can really be deadly on turkeys.
Well, I say it like this. You give me a good woodsman, we'll just simplify it with one word. You give me a good woodsman that is a competitive type caller, because I already know the time that they have poured into it. That's the one person I don't want on my land. Forgive them the way I'm going to say this. They're pure death is what they are. And there are several of those out there now. You know, we get the question, well, you can blow that turkey calling, you can win those contests, but can you kill a turkey? Let me tell you what. These old boys that I know, especially in my bracket, or I'm going to say from the 50 and up year old bracket, you don't want them on your land. They understand the language, know how to apply it in reference to being a good woodsman. Okay? Then if they've got to hunt your land once or twice, now they're turning into where they have the knowledge of the territory and the terrain. And then you put those three together, stay off my land.
Hey guys, Jake from the podcast. Got a quick tip for you when it comes to turkey calling, especially if you're a newer turkey hunter that's not as experienced, and that is using covert calling that we learned from Coach Ron Waters last year out of Alabama. And that's what helped us kill 9 birds in Alabama between 3 of us. And again, a lot of those on public land. You don't have to be a great caller like I mentioned, and all it is super soft calling at like a 20 to 30, maybe 40% volume level when it comes to calling. I really like a friction call to do that, doing soft clucks, purrs, and yelps. So working that in along with scratching the leaves worked extremely well for me last year, along with my brother Thomas, and then even Andrew. So again, covert calling can really work for you. It's also nice to have a call that you have a lot of control over, especially at lower volume levels. And that's where the Dixie Hen custom ceramic pot call from Houndstooth Game Calls really works out great for me. I love this call. Again, it helped me kill 8 birds in Alabama, or be part of 8 birds dying in Alabama, 4 from me and 4 from Thomas. Then Andrew also killed one using the Dixie Hen custom ceramic. If you want to check it out, go to houndstoothgamecalls.com and use the code Southern 25 for a discount on your order. Really love these calls, guys. I think you'll enjoy it too this spring.
So it might be the off season, but we're still always thinking about whitetails. And if you're looking to get more mobile this fall and you're looking at saddle setups, the two most common designs you're going to see are a single panel design or a double panel design. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. A single panel design is going to be more comfortable right out of the box, while a double panel design is going to be much more adjustable and customizable to your fit. We always say on the podcast, saddles are kind of like boots. Different people are going to like different things. As a general rule of thumb, I found that heavier set guys typically like a single panel more than they like a double panel. But other than that, it's just really a matter of preference. I personally use both of these saddles. This is the Method 2 from Latitude, and this is the Lone Star from Latitude. I will say that the Method 2 is really nice because it's a two-panel design. It's almost like you have a built-in back band that'll take a little bit of pressure off your back when you're sitting down. But if you're just getting into saddle hunting and you want something that's extremely comfortable right out of the box, the Lone Star is going to be your go-to. It has an advanced hip pinch reduction system in it, so right out of the box, this is going to be very comfortable, and you're not going to have the hip pinch issues that a lot of people have when they first get into saddle hunting. So if you want to be more mobile this fall, check out latitudeoutdoors.com to see these two saddles and a bunch of other mobile hunting gear. We've enjoyed them a lot, and I think you're going to enjoy them too.
Yeah, I wanted you to bring that up because I found that very interesting. We've discussed that. Another aspect of kind of talking about woodsmanship is I want to go back to like the Jack Dudleys and some of these guys that you met at a young age that were killing turkeys, hunting turkeys back then. And talk to us from did you have any kind of mentorship from a
like in the woods,
like from a hunting standpoint, or is there anything that you guys spend time with these guys?
I only had 99% of what I know I picked up through conversations, like with the Ben Rogers Lees, like with the Jack Dudleys, and on and on and on and on. But as far as a mentor in the woods, I got to hunt with a gentleman out of Brooklyn, Mississippi, Mr. Bud. I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? And Mr. Bud was definitely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the true meaning of a woodsman. He could not call worth a flip. He used an old M.L. Lynch jet slate, the little rectangular, I guess you want to call them, about 3 inches long and about an inch wide, thereabouts, that had a round knob with a little peg that he had burned it, and he'd sit there and yelp on it, and it sounded real close to somebody scratching their fingernails on a chalkboard. A lot of people don't know what a chalkboard is. But I can tell you what Mr. Bud knew. He knew where to be, when to be, what time, and for what reason. I only got 2 years with him and probably total 3 or 4 hunts max with him. Look, the first time he finally, that's a chapter in the book, okay, if I ever get it done. And it'd take me too long to tell you the whole story. But the first time he took me turkey hunting, you might as well say he had me blindfolded, because it was, boy, put your head twixt your legs. Mr. Bud, what are you talking about? Put your head twixt your legs. They don't know darn body know where I turkey hunt at, and you ain't going to find out either, and rode me around for 30 minutes before he ever stopped. And then it's still black dark, and it's still an hour before it even starts breaking day. I had no earthly idea whenever we left after I killed the bird, and my first 1.5 inch bird, I had to stick my head twixt my legs again to go out of there. That's how secretive, because we didn't have what people, y'all don't know. I mean, the people watching and listening right now have no idea what different nonprofit organizations and our departments of wildlife, fisheries, and park, the National Wild Turkey Federation, working with the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks in the old day, it's astronomical what they accomplish. And now we even have more organizations that are relatively new in TFT. And I don't call them competitive because I back them both. I'm going to back anybody and everybody that I think that can help find out what's going on with our, I'll go ahead and say it, decline right now in turkey, population. But it was at the point, here again, back when I got my driver's license, I'm 16 years old. It's right down the road, try to find a blasted turkey track. or one went across the road. And instead of just taking a pine limb and what we call juicing it out, it was take the pine limb, juice it out, and then place leaves on top of it. So the other half a dozen on a couple of 100,000 acres of land didn't find where I juiced it out at, and vice versa. It was about whenever you did kill a bird. Oh, God, I'm fixing to tell some of my dirty secrets right now. I would go to the what I call the local places, if you know what I mean, and I would build me a little grave, pile up dirt, if you know what I mean, and I'd stick a half a dozen feathers around it. So when the next guy come, there was my mark. He's dead. He ain't dead. I'm trying to keep everybody else out of there. Oh, we were dirty.
That classic. I want to ask you about going back to the woodsmanship thing.
Yes.
You mentioned something earlier. Sounds like it started when you were running around in the woods by yourself when you were a kid, and you started listening to the woods and
Yes.
kind of what the woods were saying to you. Explain that a little bit further. Like, what are some things that you mean when you say, like, you just got to listen to the woods?
Let's pre that a little bit first. One of the best things that a youngster could do right now today is go squirrel hunting. What are you going to be doing? You're going to be walking. You're going to be looking. You're going to know where all the creeks, the barbed wire fences are at, the thickets, the sloughs, the hollows, the fields, the power lines, the pipelines, old house places, and on and on and on and on. You're learning that territory, okay? That's first. Repeat the question again, then I'll answer it, okay?
Listening to the woods.
I see more with my ears than I do my eyes, especially now since I got problems with my eyesight and will for the rest of my life, but that's okay. Let me give you an obvious that anybody who has got at least 5 to 10 years of experience should have already figured out by now. I'll give you a scenario. How about that? All of a sudden, I get up this morning, I go, I listen, I'll hoot, whatever it may be. Nothing gobbles, nothing gobbles, nothing gobbles. It starts getting daylight. Okay, now it's full-fledged daylight. And all of a sudden, I hear crows raising Cain over here. From that squirrel hunting, I remember that there's an old pasture over here. I'm heading straight to that pasture because there's at least a 50% chance that those crows are aggravating turkeys that they're looking at, and he just ain't gobbling. I'm sitting there, and it could be a magpie. You know what I'm trying to say? You could be up in the mountains in New Mexico. There are always all animals communicate. For the turkey hunters, don't y'all think whenever you go blundering in the morning and all of a sudden you bust a white-tailed deer out that goes, whew, 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 whew. You don't think that turkey knows what that means? Now I'm sit up and I'm calling, 15 minutes has gone by, and he hasn't gobbled. I hadn't heard him spitting drum. I hadn't heard anything else. There's a little dewberry, blackberry thicket right here, and all of a sudden I hear a thrush start doing a little alarm call. Oh boy, I'm shifting. Because that thrush could be telling me that there's a turkey coming in silent. That cat squirrel that jumps up on the side of the tree and just goes one or two little barks. Not the alarm where they start raising Cain and barking louder and louder and louder. That little cat squirrel, gray squirrel if y'all want to call it that, we always call them cat squirrels, can be telling me that bird is on the way. I can even mix it in with my calling. I could be yelping like a hen turkey if I'm having, let's just say, problems with a bird, and turn around and take my crow call out, and I'll point it up as if crows are in the air. And then I'll crow call and crow call and crow call and then yelp. So therefore, I have now told him that there's a crow that's looking at this hen turkey. I put more realism into it. So by listening and pay attention to the sounds, then secondary, the sights. Same scenario. I'm working a bird. He shuts up. Here comes one rabbit running by me. 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, nothing. That rabbit just told me there is a good solid chance that there is a predator in the area. Okay? That means calm down. In fact, I'm going to quit calling if I see something like that. You see what I'm saying? I'm through calling because there's a better than 50% chance something spooked that rabbit. And that rabbit is running for a reason. And if that rabbit came from the general direction or where that bird is at, there's a coyote, a bobcat, something that's out there, there's a good chance of it. Now, 2 rabbits come by. That's a horse with a different color. That's boyfriend looking for girlfriend. Hold your ground. So by hearing/seeing about what Mother Nature is picture she is painting for you, if you can get inside of that, we'll go back to stay off my land. I don't want you in my woods because you're starting to figure it out. And it'll take you 20 plus years to realize this unless you pay attention to what I'm saying right here today. And I guarantee you, you're not going to take Bob or Eddie Salters or if Ben Law Rogers Lee was alive, Chris Perry, on and on and on and on. All these what I call, the greats. They will all tell you the same thing. Calling can be an important part of it, but it is, generally speaking, especially in the deep South, it is generally the minor part unless you have graduated to where you understand that something like, and yeah, I'm pushing a product. Do y'all notice I'm using a rhythm? Mm-hmm. You ever watched a hen turkey scratch? Mm-hmm. She will go scratch, 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 sometimes a scratch. That right there is one of the most convincing things that you can do, whether you use that or whether you use leaves, on the ground. When you get to that point and you understand about little duets, little whines, little soft stuff, little sweet stuff that he can't hear that. Yeah, he can too. I think the biologists even tell you 6 to 7 times is good. I say 10 times is good. So 10 yards is now 100 yards. 20 yards is now 200 yards. Now the wind is blowing from north, to south or south to north, double that distance downwind from you. And oh my God, he can hear that 400 or 500 yards in. So those are the things that you need to hone in on first. Is going to be woodsmanship. And then I would say hone in on your calling and become diverse with different types of calls, but specifically still nothing's going to beat natural voice. Nothing's going to beat a mouth call diaphragm because you can do so much with it.
Yeah, how good a gobbler can hear is a lesson, which you said 20 years. I think I'm closing in on it. I don't think I'm quite 20, but I think I'm 18 years now because I started when I was a kid. But one thing that I learned just last year was just how good they can hear, because we talk about them all the time, but we interviewed a fellow last year named Ron Waters. We all call him Coach. And he was talking about what he calls covert calling, just calling very, very soft and quiet, very much probably like a lot of the old timers you knew back in the day, cluck 3 times, shut up, that kind of thing. I had some birds that I thought were on a logging pad. I didn't know for sure if they were there, but I snuck in. I got about 150 yards away, and I got the ceramic pot call I was using, and I called as quietly as I could physically call on that thing. Mm-hmm. If you were sitting from me to you, you'd probably barely be able to hear it. And I clucked and yelped a little bit, just kind of going around, and one of them hammered it. And I was sitting there, I was like, oh, like they can hear that. They can hear a lot better than I thought they could. Mm-hmm. And it took him about 35 minutes, and he didn't gobble again, but he came in and I got him.
But do me a favor. Mm-hmm. You wipe your mouth right there. Get rid of that last drop of milk that's still coming out of your mouth. Ain't right.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
He ain't but 18 years into it. He still got some time. I said 20 years to start really learning.
That's right.
Then tack on another 20 to that, and you go, okay, I'm going to compare it to, I guess, kind of martial arts. You know, you have a black belt, and basically what you've done whenever you become a black belt, you have opened up your mind enough that, okay, I can learn. I'm 71. Guess what? I can learn. I'm going to learn. As long as you keep that, the worst thing that I hate to see, whether it be competitive or whether it be a hunter, whether it be in competition calling or whether it be a hunter, is a person go, I got it now. I know everything. No, you don't. Ain't going to happen. The day, let me see. I'm gonna see if I can remember how Ben used to say it. Ben Rogers Lee, which is from your great state, Ben Rogers Lee was doing a seminar. In fact, he was doing it in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And a guy in the audience that come Q&A time says, Mr. Lee says, how do you know when you become the best turkey caller you can possibly be? Never missed a beat. He says, well, son, he says, that's real easy. He says, whenever you can call that turkey out of the oven and he's done and he can get up on that plate for you, then you've learned everything you need to know. Ain't going to happen, if you know what I mean. I miss old Ben, too. And if I may, and I know this is kind of off track, everybody in this industry, every turkey hunter that there is alive right now and to come in the future owes a great debt of gratitude. I owe it to to Jack Dudley and to Ben Rogers Lee, because Ben Rogers Lee was the first person on a national type scale to go out and talk and teach, even though sometimes he was full of you know what, but he was fun, if you know what I'm saying. He would entertain as well as educate. All of us owe him a debt of gratitude. Every game call company that there is in this country, all owe him a debt of gratitude, because he was the first to open up those doors that I'm aware of. Now, go up north, and there's the Dick Kirby's, that were responsible for it, up in that part of the country. And there's a bunch of good guys up there, too. There's a bunch of redneck strapped in a Yankee body up there. I can just tell you that real quick. So everybody out there needs to do a little bit of research and find out who Ben Rogers Lee was. Originally born, I believe, in Coffeyville, Alabama.
Yeah, Benny hunted with him one time. He talks about it all the time. My mentor hunted with Ben Rogers Lee one time, and man, he talks about it a lot. And but anyway, so there is no finish line when it comes to these things. You're always learning.
Correct.
And another part of that I wanted to get into was, I've heard you say this before, that nothing beats a natural voice call.
I guess it's because of vocal cords, if you know what I mean. And then let me ask you a question. How many people do you know that can use their natural voice?
Not many. I don't know. I don't think I know anybody who straight up natural voice calls for turkeys in the woods consistently.
He ain't never heard it. It's something different. He hasn't been educated. Okay? So that natural voice, and at my age, I've lost mine. Occasionally I can have it back and forth, but I basically have lost. That'll pass. That'd kill turkey. But I can't do what I used to do. I've just worn my larynx out. It's what I've done. Something else, and I don't have one in here, something else that is an extremely good artificial call is a trumpet or a wing bone. Like, let me ask you, how many turkey hunters do you know? Ballpark.
Over 50.
Okay. How many use a trumpet or a wing bone?
2 that I'm aware of.
So that's 48 people have been blowing something else at their birds, and only 2. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's all it is something different. That unique sound. And it's just got that more natural type sound. Is it going to get nasty and raspy? And nope. I can't do it. There are a few people who can, but I can't do it. But always that something different can sometimes close the gap for you. So, natural voice. Most of the time, if you know 100 turkey hunters, you might know one that can actually do anything with their natural voice. So it's something different, and it is something natural. You know, you don't hear slate. You don't hear glass. You don't hear crystal. You don't hear aluminum. See, that's one of the things that from the standpoint of a judge in calling competition, and I will be judging the world, and I will be judging the U.S. Open this year in Louisiana. In fact, Southern boys do all the cooking and stuff out of Louisiana. I've got to give them a little plug here right now. They have stepped it up. First place in the U.S. Open and first place in the U.S. Open friction will be $8,000. The World Championship, which has been revived thanks to Kenny Wise, is in Mobile. It won't pay that type of purse to it, but we and he will be doing everything we do to raise as much money as we possibly can. Those two contests are coming quickly. June. What did we say? The world is June.
You said
6th,
June. Yep.
June 6th, 7th, something like that. I'll have to look it up and find out when the U.S. Open is. And for those of you, I know that there are people out there that love to listen and watch, these podcasts and stuff. Let me tell you what, guys and gals, there ain't nothing like one-on-one and being there. So I would highly recommend, if you can, go to the World and or either go to the U.S. Open. And if you're going to carry your wife and she's not interested in hunting, leave her at home because she's going to kill you because it's going to be yep all day long. But God, you can hear some beautiful sounds. I'm sorry, I got off.
Well, I like that. That's good advice. And also, I have to touch on this because your natural voice call is very raspy, like impressively raspy. I can do a natural voice call, but it's very, very clean. And
you're exhaling, though.
I'm exhaling.
Yeah.
So talk about that. There's a big difference between inhaling and exhaling.
In the beginning, I strictly exhaled, okay? And between 16 and 17, that little thing called a voice change happened, and I lost it. And I'm going to say 95 plus people, that's how they call is exhaling. But since I already had a background, I understood that what I was doing was I was stretching that larynx. And so I just reversed it and started sucking in is what I started doing, and found out I had more control over my larynx with my throat muscles by inhaling than I did. I can't do anything exhaling anymore than exhaling. In other words, it's kind of like a diaphragm that I could, let's just say, instead of pushing up as tight up against the roof of my mouth, I found out that I can loosen that pressure by loosening my throat muscles, which lets more rattle, come into it. There are probably 25% of the people that are listening could teach themselves how to do it. I'll warn you ahead of time, especially if you're trying to do it inhaling, you're going to get a sore throat because you're doing something that's unnatural to the human voice. But it's like, think of saying, ow, but now I'm going to inhale, ow, 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 ow. I hadn't done that in a long time, but you're gonna rip your throat up is what you're gonna do. Okay, until you
even exhaling, it gets me when I'm exhaling. I can only do it a couple times, especially if you're out in the woods and it's a pollen-filled day. You know?
Lord, yes.
They'll get you.
Oh, yes.
Turkey be like, man, that sounds pretty good. And then you get to hacking up a lung over there, and they're like, I don't know if that sounds like a turkey after all.
Well, sometimes some of the most cruddiest sounds you can do is what will actually end up killing the bird. Ben Lee actually told this story, and I got to experience it one day. That I was going over a barbed wire fence. I had laid my gun down on the ground to climb over like a 3-strand barbed wire fence, and I was trying to get in front, quote, in front of a bird that I was working, and I had permission to be on both people's land. And when it squeaked, it went like, ow. You got to be kidding me. I was just, eek, ow. God dog, he's done a few steps closer. Then I try to get my gun, and of course, I get hung up in the barbed wire fence in my crotch with the barbed wire sticking into my claw. I finally got the gun in my hand, and I am literally up against the fence post going, and I killed a bird. It was that different sound.
Caught him in with a fence post.
Caught him in with the fence.
Hey, man, if it works, it works.
Bill's told that same story, and I went, yeah, bull, you know what? And until it happened to me. So strangest things can happen. He can want to hear the strangest sound.
Now, what about the gobble? How are you doing the gobble by inhaling? Okay.
And then I start mixing in, putting an echo chamber in my tongue. That goes first now. And that used to be my one thing that everybody, Mr. Preston, will you gobble for me? But it just, the quality is not there anymore.
It's better than what I can do.
Well, here's my philosophy. It'll kill a turkey. Just when I can do it. I can't do it all the time.
But just be careful doing it on public land. Is that right?
I do not recommend anybody gobbling on public land that's got me shot twice. A sound I do like to use that is a gobbler sound, if you want me to visit it for that in a minute, is spitting and drumming. Oh, God dog it. Y'all got one of my secrets.
You're saying too much.
Listen, you didn't say that last time. I'm glad we talked.
Yeah, we didn't get that on the first go around.
Had to bait you into it.
I'm still trying to figure out a device I can make to do that with.
I have heard someone years ago say that they used a spit and drum call and that they were like killing the fire out of long spurred turkeys with it. And ever since then, I've been trying to find someone who would talk about it. So I'm going to press you on this a little bit.
Not only will it kill a long-spurred bird, but it'll also kill that 2-year-old bird. That is what when a 2-year-old is ready to come, he's a movie star. But at the same time, a 2-year-old can be one of your toughest birds that they are, because he wants to breed, but he's scared to death. That spitting and drumming works on all age class birds. But if you break it down into human terminology, it's real simple. Here is a gobbler with a hen, because you done been yelping. You follow what I'm saying? It's not the first call I pull out or the first call that I do. You've already been yelping, so you've established that there is a hen there that is wanting to be submissive or wanting to breed, wanting to have company, okay? With that being said, by spitting and drumming, I just got through saying that there is another male gobbler in here that ain't brave enough to be vocal. That's the philosophy that I use. Now, sometimes that could, in a human type terminology, also be, and here comes a secret for you, that 1.5 plus bird that does not want to be challenged. But in any situation, I have not, except for a Jake or two, I have not had that spook birds. It might not always call them in, but it ain't going to scare them.
And you do it just like how you just did it right here. Just that loud.
Oh, yes. Natural voice. I mean, like I said, I'm trying, and there's been some apparatuses that have been invented, but nothing beats this right here. Maybe one day before I die, I can come up with that. I came up with that, the flap and scratch, and I'm very happy with it.
Can you demonstrate that one more time, by the way?
Sure. Well, this is a revive. And what was I doing when y'all walked in? I was on the sewing machine. me and Charlie and Cheryl are making all of these. We couldn't get the camouflage material, so I go to Hobby Lobby and I find this real lightweight material. And for $19.95, you can cut it open and find out what's inside, because I ain't going to tell you. Turkey scratch with a rhythm.
That sounds good on these microphones.
But it also, it's like popping a towel. You can grab a hold of both ends. She just hit the ground. You get all the sound. And the beauty of it is, you can wad it up into nothing, and you ain't gonna hurt
That's a
nobody.
good catch. Yeah.
Ain't nothing to it. You know, it's lightweight, not cumbersome. Stick it in your pocket.
Stick it down in a vest.
That's it. Vest, pocket, whatever it may be. That's death. Old turkey hunters, they understand.
Well, I
okay?
like the idea of this too, because I mean, I'm sure you know, like if you're sitting next to a tree, you only got so many leaves around you. You can scratch,
Or in
you know.
pines.
Or in pines.
That's what happened. What happened is I got tired of getting caught like, oh, crap, there he is. And I'm trying to bring some more leaves. That, and put that little apparatus on your knee. I mean, I've seen people take Walmart bags and wad them up. That'll work, if you know what I mean. But I can take that, put on my knee, lay my gun right here. Very little movement. Okay? See what I'm saying?
Right. Keep it right underneath your gun.
Right there. If I've got a John or a Jane that I'm hunting, you know, another little trick that I love to do is, how many hens do you see standing in one spot for 45 minutes? I'll get up and get back behind them. And if pine straw, for example, or pine and hardwood, you know, mixed, it's not going to make a tremendous amount of noise. I can literally take something like this and be here on private land, and then be here, and then be here, and then be here. Well, the bird's moving back to the right. I want to move back to the left, and I'm going to move back this way, you know, to the left, and try to draw the bird in for my John or my Jane to be able to harvest it. And I put more realism into it. Look, you're painting a picture to that gobbler. That's what you're doing. You're painting a picture for him. So anything that you can do, instead of it being black and white, if you can use a little bit of yellow, it's going to be better. Now, if you can use blue in there with it, it's going to be a little bit better. What am I doing? I'm adding more depth to my painting, okay? So that's the analogy or the comparison that I use, is paint that picture for him. You know, whenever I yelp, you know, I will go from, depending on, I'm going to have to learn how to shoot left-handed, but I go from my right side to my left side, from my left side to straight ahead, to taking, if he's still way on out there, taking my hand and cupping and calling back behind me to make him say, I'm moving her, is what I'm doing. Which is what? Real. I'm throwing that crow call. I'm throwing that cat squirrel. Back when we had Bob White quail, oh, God, I used to love to whistle like a quail bird whenever I was turkey hunting, because it signified to him that there was tranquility here. There was peace, you know, that is right here. All those other little bitty sounds is the part that we were talking about earlier, about seeing with your ears and not necessarily your eyes. I'm now painting that picture in his ears. Why do people, I know, going to be speaking to get aggravated, and I don't care. Why do people shoot these TV shows? And I've done a tremendous amount of them. Remember, that's some great education. my hat's off. Okay, so it's not totally negative, but when you've got that bird coming in here again, especially in the deep south, why do you keep calling to that bird? Once he has committed and is coming to you, and a field bird is great for this kind of stuff because you can or real open hardwoods, because you can see. I want him to come in and be looking for me. He knows where you're at. He knows the tree you were sitting by. You follow me? There ain't no doubt he can come from a mile away and walk to your tree within 20 yards. That's fact. That ain't fiction. That's flat out fact. But why do I want to continue to call to him? Because he might get out there at 60 yards and go, here I am. I am the best looking thing, sweetheart, you've ever seen in your life, but you're going to have to come to me now. I want him coming in looking. That's one of the worst mistakes that beginning turkey hunters make, is they continuously call and call and call and call and call and call and call. The bird commits. He starts coming your way. They continue to call and call. Oh, dang, what happened? Remember, I was talking about a little bit earlier, calling here and calling here and calling here and calling here. He knows that I'm right here, which is gun range, okay? I see him out there at 100 yards, hardwood bottom, and he's committed. He's coming to me. He's cut my calling, or I visually see him coming to me. I'm through. As long as he is moving in my direction, even if there is a 3-minute to 5-minute pause, as long as he has committed and coming in my direction, shut up. You've done your job. Okay, I'm sorry. I get off on other things.
I love that tangent. It kind of goes back to the experience of woodsmanship and just the calling ability all working together.
Yes. That's exactly it.
Because you can't really teach woodsmanship and you can't teach experience. You can teach calling, but you can't teach experience and woodsmanship.
You were spot on, 150%. Remember I said 20 years and wiped that one drop you still got left? There you go.
I do, not to get too much off the calling subject, I do want to ask a little bit more about some of these guys when you were coming up in your, well, actually, we need, actually, I'm going to scratch the first question. What did you do as a career in order to start being able to turkey hunt a whole bunch and have more freedom during turkey season?
Well, as I've already mentioned, my dad was a pipe fitter plumber. You want me to tell the whole story?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. My dad was a pipe fitter plumber. I was dyslexic, and people did not know what dyslexia was back then, so very bluntly, I was a dumbass. Okay? It took me 13 years, not 12, to get out of school because I failed a year. And it took me almost every summer in summer school. Nobody knew what it was or what was going on. My brain, I don't even know how to explain it to people. It sees things different. It thinks things different, if you know what I mean. That was during the last part of the Vietnam War. Whenever I was fixing to turn 18, and my draft number was 4. Number 4. But it was towards the end of it, and basically they were pulling the troops out, but still sending some over there. My dad, and if I break down a little bit, y'all gonna have to forgive me. My dad was a World War II vet, and he come to me and he said, son, he said, look at my old hands. And they were beat up and banged up and cleaning bricks on the house one day. The acid got in him, eat holes in him, and very hard worker and very much of a man's man. He reminded me of John Wayne, is what he did. And he said, son, you know, you haven't heard me talk that much about the war. I said, no, sir. I said, I know you have dreams at night. They didn't know what do they call it now?
PTSD.
They didn't know about that, you know, back then. And he would wake up during the night hollering and screaming and stuff like that. So it always bothered him some of the things he had to do. And he sat me down and he said, son, he said, look at my old hands and look at my body. And he said, I want you to do something better than what I've done. And he said, I know that you have a hard time with education. I don't want you to see the things that I've seen and more. I don't want you to have to do the things that I've had to do in war. I said, well, now, Dad, that's whenever all the yuppies were leaving and going to Canada and stuff like that. And I said, well, Daddy, I said, I love my country. He said, I know that. But he said, if you're in school, any kind of school, trade school, anything, then you won't have to go. He said, I've never asked you to do a whole lot for me, but I'm begging you with tears in his eyes. He said, do something else. And my mama was a hairstylist. And I was in and out of a beauty salon all my life, if you know what I mean. I'd walk in and she'd be giving a perm or something like that. And I'd go, Mama, it stinks in here. She said, baby, that's money. You know what I mean? And she said, he said, why don't you try hairstyling? He said, I've seen you standing there and watch what your mother does. I said, Daddy, I ain't going to do that. He said, why? I said, well, because that's all those fruitcakes, which everybody has a right to be the way that they want to be. Or as I have a philosophy that goes like this, each to their own, as long as their each does not bother my own. Okay? Anyway, moving on. And my dad looked at me straight in the eye. He said, son, well, are you? I said, well, hell no. I think that's the first time I had bluntly, used a strong curse word, in front of him. He said, well, you ain't got to prove nothing but to yourself. And he said, think about it. You're going to be in an air-conditioned building in the summertime. You're going to be in a heated building in the wintertime. And you're going to have, quote, a hell of a lot of good-looking women around you. There's a point there. I said, well, I'll go try barber school. And that was back in the flat top and crew cut days, and where guys were first starting to wear their hair long, and blow dryers were just invented, and curling irons and stuff like that. And I went to the Miss Geiger at Geiger School of Cosmetology. I went to barber school first, made it for about 2 weeks, and I said, this ain't for me. And then here again, he encouraged me. He says, go see Miss Geiger. I said, she's kind of good looking anyway. And I walked up in there, and God, there was a whole bunch of good looking women, if you know what I mean. And I was shy, and you wouldn't know it now. But I was shy and everything. She come over and said, well, come over here, meet so-and-so and meet so-and-so and so-and-so. And I did. And I said, well, heck, I'll hang around a little bit. And then this cute little girl comes up and says, well, let me wash your hair. And I go, oh, okay. And one thing led to another. That was the beginning of what we call precision cutting back then. A little bitty teeny scissors, and it took you a good half hour. And it was a precision cut, that angles and everything, and that intrigued me. And I got into hairstyling, but it was more of a family-oriented. The whole family came in. I cut the dude's hair. I cut the youngin's hair. Had my spit bottle. I'm sorry to tell y'all, I'm a tobacco abuser. I had my spit bottle sitting up there. In fact, I'm going to take a little break right now, okay? Bad habit. Y'all don't do this crap, okay? If you didn't want me to chew tobacco, then you need to go find somebody else to cut your hair. And I built my clientele up to where you strictly had to have an appointment. I worked by appointment only. So come turkey season, you did not expect to get a haircut before at the earliest 10 o'clock in the morning. Would I work till 10 o'clock at night? You betcha. I sure would. But I was going to turkey hunt. And if he was gobbling good, a lot of people like some of these doctors. I might be 30 minutes to an hour late getting in, if you know what I mean. Even had it to the point to where I had a handful of clients, ladies, that were marathon runners back then. And that's back in that time frame. That would have been back when Lamar County, Mississippi, was starting to open up. And these were newbies, okay, the birds were. They hadn't been educated yet. These ladies never paid me for a haircut because once a year, twice a year in phone calls, they bring me in a chart. And that chart would be where they saw birds, the address, sometimes the landowner's name, sometimes the door was already opened for me, if you know what I mean, because as these ladies would run their normal paths and stuff, of course, they're going to wave and see people going to work and stuff like that. Might even stop and visit with them. It might not be but 20 acres. It might be 60 acres. It might be 120. It might be, but I had some routes that I could go on when I started shifting from strictly the Southern National Forest to Lamar County for some easier birds. And now my foundation has been laid. God, I had to be 30s, mid 20s to late 30s, age-wise, somewhere thereabout. And I had all these places of private land. And I could literally do it the lazy way, or which is what I call road check, which is ride down the road, pull off to the little logging road, walk 30 yards out there, hoot, crow, yelp, whatever it may be. If he didn't gobble, back in my vehicle, back down the road, next spot, he's gobbling, bam, I'm going to go hunt him. So the hairstyling was a very big part of it. Dick Kirby was I believe a cosmetologist. Harold Knight is a barber. Eddie Salters from here again, your great state, Alabama, he's a barber. But what it does, it teaches you communication with people is what it actually does on how to talk. Because we were also, women and guys both will talk to their barbers or their hairstylists before they'll talk to a damn psychiatrist or a psychologist. So you almost had to have a minor, in that too. The clients became family is what they became. And I do not regret. In fact, to a certain point, I kind of missed the closeness I had with my clientele. And my little joke is if I had a long-haired girl and she just wanted, just the ends, the dead ends trimmed off, I could take them scissors and run them up there about 6 or 8 inches and shake it. Where's your husband's turkeys at? So it was a great experience. It was a great career. If I had to do over with again, I'd do it again. I might even stay in hairstyling because good gosh, what they pay for a hairstyle right now is outrageous in comparison to what we got, back then. So that's my base foundation of what I was in my former life.
No, that's fantastic. And it's also good to kind of hear, talk about like career choices, but how you were able to make that work because your passion still was the outdoors and hunting and specifically turkey hunting. And you kind of had your career built out around that too, which is really fascinating.
Well, see, even in my hairstyling days, I was also a trapper. In my hairstyling days, I would, if I had a cancellation or something like that and couldn't fill it, especially when me and Charlie Mays had a shop across from USM, I could slip back into the back, and even whenever I was working for my mother, I'd slip back into the back, and I'd build diaphragms. In fact, some of the old guys now, Lord, that's going back to when we used lead frames, you know what I'm saying. I slipped back in the back and built diaphragms, and I remember old Edwin Lounge said, boy, he says, every one of them diaphragms you got a piece of hair in it right now. Because I wouldn't brush off good enough if I knew it was for one of my buddies. Oh, gee whiz. That's going back to the good old days is what it's doing. It really is.
What about this day and age do you miss that guys like me and Andrew, again, from a completely different generation, younger dudes, are like don't get an experience based off
There's
what
too much technology. I know that sounds simple and blunt, but there's too much technology, not to say that I don't have cameras and stuff like that. I mean, I love my Wise Eye cameras. They are, yeah, I'm putting a plug in here, but They are, and I down no company out there. I just think if you want the Cadillac version, look into Wise Eye, and I do use and utilize them. But at the same time, there's so much of that technology that is out there, cell phones, OnX, yeah, I got OnX, OnX, whatever it may be, Landglide, you know, all these apps and stuff. There's not enough of this. Foot on the ground. Nothing still takes the place of getting out there and easing through the woods. Now, you notice the little word that I used? Easing through the woods? In all situations which I physically cannot do anymore just because of my age and broke ankle and eyesight and everything else, even whenever I am, that's the reason why I go back to the squirrel hunting, okay? You can learn the lay of the land then while you're squirrel hunting. But I want to be a part of Mother Nature. When does an animal move in a steady line through the woods?
Not very often.
And then usually that means that that animal has been spooked, okay? So it's step, 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 pause, step, pause, step, 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 pause. Take your foot, scratching the leaves a little bit. Become a part of. Now, all this stuff I'm telling you, these little tricks and tidbits, don't do it on public land. I'm sorry. Some of this stuff you cannot do. You're taking your life in your hands, so please be careful. But I don't want to be the intruder. I don't want to be the predator that is in the woods. I want to be part of those woods. Here again, I can remember using bobwhite quail when we had quail as part of my cover-up. I haven't done it in 5 or 6 years because I hadn't been able to. One of my favorite ways to whitetail deer hunt is still slip around and be on the ground. You know what I am on the ground? I'm a turkey. I'm a part of Mother Nature, is what I am. So technology to a degree has destroyed a lot of the old-timey ways. Now, you give me somebody who is a good woodsman or some of the old-timey ways and has the brains to be able to figure out all these friggin' buttons and the technology, that then turns into the person and is a good caller. I don't want him in my own state, much less my own personal hunting place, because that human being, and they are very, very, very few. We are a dying, and I am not the technological person. If I could ever figure that out, I would be bad then, but I can't. Okay, I'm sorry. Right here again, the dyslexia comes in, and I just ain't smart enough to figure all this crap out. If you know what I'm saying. So go back to some of the old school and go back to that one key word: becoming a good woodsman and understanding what's going on and why it's happening out there, and you become a very strong force then.
And then on the flip side of that question, I want to know, what do you miss? Now, you can't say technology or lack of technology. What do you miss about how you used to turkey hunt and how guys used to do it back in like the 60s, 70s,
Oh, that's
80s?
easy from me personally as an individual. Here again, we go back to the old days. My passion was when Edwin Lamb called me, or I saw Harlan and say, there's a horse's rear end over there by Red Hill Airfield. You can't kill him. Oh, don't you tell me that crap. You know, I've hunted birds for up to 4 years, a bird, and kill him on the 4th year. God, what an education you get from those. Don't cuss him out. Thank him. You know what I'm saying? I miss being able to pick out an individual bird and go after that one bird, kind of like the whitetail hunter that finds a buck, and even though 140 or 150 comes by, it might not be but a 125-inch deer that's an old deer that's coming down that has whooped his rear end. It's the same thing. It's that turkey. And I'm not going to tell you all the stories because, like I said, keep your fingers crossed. I got a buddy from Michigan, Mike Ives, is coming down, and I'm going to speak my book into recorders. But there's the submarine bird. There's the fence bird I've done told you about. There's the bathtub bird. There's the Statue of Liberty birdie. There's the cow manure bird. Then all of these things are basically the birds that whoop my rear end more than once that I got a great education from. And 90% of those birds that I killed with woodsmanship and paying attention to Mother Nature, with calling being the very smallest part of it. That's turkey hunting. For the guys and gals that I'm going to insult, and there's going to be some out there that say, I'm not going to shoot a bird unless he comes in spitting, drumming, gobbling, and all this and puts on a show for me. Let me know where he's at. I'll go take care of him for you. I'm going to kill him any way I can as long as it's legally, ethically, and morally correct by the state rules and regulations of the state that I'm hunting in, and my morals get a little bit low.
I do. Well, do you have anything else? Because I had something to kind of wrap it up with.
Yeah, I wanted to. You mentioned this earlier. You have been shot
Twice.
Two
Yes.
different occasions.
Yes.
How many years apart?
A couple of years apart, but it was within 200 yards down in Shelby off the Cowpen Road.
How did the first time you got shot come about? What happened?
The first time I got shot, I will not say names, he's dead and gone. I was one of the few old-time turkey hunters back when we did not have a whole bunch of birds, okay? It was starting to get populated, okay? It was in that first initial burst. And long story short, I had a bird out in front of me, a gobbler with 3 hens. I had started gobbling to him. He was cutting my gobbling off, and he was slowly heading in my direction, and I heard a twig snap behind me. And there's gobbleberry thickets out there, and I turn around, I ease around and look, and I see a guy coming. I didn't know who it was. So I slipped my gloves off, and I reached back behind the tree, and I waved to him like that, like, hey, I'm here. Slip my gloves right back on again, gobbled at him. And those who say there's not a God in heaven, you're wrong. Because God basically whispered into my ear, you better look again. And as I turned around and looked, there's a guy by a tree with a gun on his shoulder. I hollered and balled up in a ball, so my back and my backside caught the blunt of the shot. Thank God we didn't have TSS back then. I almost had to tote him out of the woods. He quit turkey hunting until about 3 or 4 years later. I went to his house and I said, you're going to, no, I'm not going to turkey hunt again. I said, yeah, you are, and you're going to turkey hunt with me. And I got to spend one day in the woods with him, and I think it was a year, 2 years later, he passed away with a heart attack. The second time, I said, well, now I'm going to get in the thicket.
Well, before we get to the second one, on that first one, so you saw him shoulder up, getting ready to shoot, and you rolled out of the way, caught the, I guess he shot you.
I literally did this. I rolled and balled up, so my butt's sticking up in the air as he pulled the trigger. At the moment he pulled the trigger, so the bulk of the shot were in my back and my butt and the upper part of my legs.
What's it feel like getting shot with lead?
Yeah, I don't feel good.
That's what I was about to ask.
Think of 100 wasps hitting you at one time. That'd be a good illustration. And then it was cool that morning, so I had on a lot of clothes. Did some of them penetrate? Yes, they did. I think I probably still, because for years later, I can remember like, God, dog it, there's a pimple. Bing! It's like it would work its way to the top. Doctors won't take it out. It does too much damage, from what they tell me. The second time I was shot, this is in my probably 20s, something like that.
Wait, how old are you on the first one?
In my 20s, both times.
Oh, okay.
The second time I was shot by a 16-year-old kid that basically I had made up my mind that I'm going to get in a thicket now. So where shot can't get through it, so on, so on, and so forth. Which is a wrong thing to do, okay? And did not know that anybody was there, did not know anything, but basically slipped into my gobbling. Here again, I was gobbling to another bird that was henned up. Y'all should be getting a tidbit out of this too, although I'd rather you spit and drum. And just shot up in the bushes. I didn't get hit as bad, as hard, and how do I politely say this? We had a disagreement in the woods. I still have that single barrel 12 gauge shotgun because his daddy ain't called me.
Ooh.
I do not want to go back through the conversation, but it was not nice and it was not polite. And that was a 16-year-old kid that did not belong in the woods. I highly ask, not even recommend, but ask every hunter that is out there, regardless of your age. I don't care if you're 90 or 9. Before, I don't care what the state laws say, before you go in the woods, go through a hunter safety education course. And by the way, carry your dad, your mom, your aunt, your uncle, or a grown adult that by law does not have to have it. Folks, it ain't going to hurt you. Okay? And then you can't say, I didn't know. You know, when I was talking about squirrel hunting, when I first started squirrel hunting, I had a single barrel 410 at the time, 6, 7, 8 years old, you know, with dogs. I couldn't even load my gun till we got to the tree that the squirrel was in, and then I got to load my gun, shoot, and my daddy every time, or my Uncle Lewis every time, your gun broke down? Yes, sir. Before you got to move again. So that's the way I was brought up. Have I made mistakes? Sure. We are all human. But any factor that you can take off, and we've heard for eons, reds, whites, and blues you keep off of you in the woods. That's why the white palm of my hand got me shot.
With that first guy.
Mm-hmm.
What did you say to the first guy when that happened? I mean, how long did it take him to realize that he was not shooting at a turkey and that he had shot?
Whenever I mean the scream, the holler, and the boom was all simultaneously. And whenever I turned around, he's on his knees with his head in his hands. And you know, for a moment, and I'm going, you know, I'm okay. And it's like, I'm going, my God, I'm going to have to tote this man out of the woods because he's going to have a freaking heart attack on me. You know what I mean? So it was an immediate, you know, type thing. The second time was a little bit different. He tried to run. What I'm telling you, that situation was not a good situation. And when I caught him, I took his gun away from him, and I tried to talk very civil to him. And the words that come out of his mouth shouldn't be even coming out of my mouth at 71 years of age, and how it was public land, and I shouldn't have been doing this. And I said, you're correct. I should not have been gobbling. I said, but that gives you no excuse to pull the trigger on something that you don't recognize and see the whole, let me repeat that you see the whole animal, not just a head, because the human mind can do some weird stuff to you, if you know what I mean. I never shoot thicket and all I see is a head sticking up. I ain't going to shoot. Sorry. I ain't going to do it. Now, if all of a sudden that head goes, ow, I'm shooting. You know what I mean? But unless I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is a legal, ethical shot on a turkey, I ain't going to pull the trigger. Not knowingly. I'm not going to pull the trigger. It's not worth it.
Did you ever hunt that area again?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I know where there's a tree at right now off the Cowpen Road if it hadn't been cut. You know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And I know they've done some changing down there to where part of the land you can hunt on, part of the land you can't hunt on. And it's been too many years since I've been down there. But if nothing has changed, I know a tree I could go sit by right now, and I would bet you 2-to-1 odds that before 12 o'clock I'd have a dead turkey.
Interesting. All right. So, but before we wrap up, I've got one thing I have to bring up. We were sitting here last time, and we were recording. And you've got a bunch of stuff on the table back here behind you. You got a bunch of trophies and everything back here.
Good job.
I know what you're going after.
There's one box call back there. I was looking at. I was like, "Is that Donald Trump's
Yeah.
signature on a box call?"
Mr. Sonny Perdue, who in his first term,
Turn it a little bit more this way.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I was like, that looks like Donald Trump's signature.
what does it say on that side?
Trump in 2020.
Yeah. I have to tell a little story, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I do the Tennessee Governor's Hunt, which is a great thing and raises a lot of money for the state of Tennessee for wildlife research and restoration and everything. Mr. Sonny Perdue, I drew him. I was his guide. He's become a very good friend of mine. He was the Secretary of Agriculture at that time. And we're sitting on the tailgate of my truck because he says, "Preston, I'm kind of hungry." I said, "Mr. Sonny, I'm not from around here." And then Johnny speaks up and says, "Well, the closest place is about 35, 40 minutes from here." And he says, "Dadgummit, I don't want to." He says, "I want to keep hunting, get a drink of water." I said, "Well, I got some potted meat and vein of sausage and beanie weenies." And say, "Break them out, boy." So here I am sitting on the tailgate with the Secretary of Agriculture during Trump's first term, and we're eating vein of sausage and stuff. And I said, "I hate to ask you this, and I already know the answer is no." I said, "God, I'd love to have a box call signed by President Trump." He said, "I can get that done." Johnny says, "No, you can't." He says, "You got to get 3. I said, 3? He said, "Yeah, 1 for me, 1 for you, and 1 for us to auction off at the Tennessee Governor's Hunt at the big banquet, that they have." So months later, I get a phone call, and guess what? And I love it, especially because it is, y'all cannot see this on film, but it's red, white, and blue on the lid.
Mm-hmm.
The American flag, instead of stars, is turkey tracks. And I think that night, many years ago, it went somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000. So there's 3 of those in existence that I'm aware of. Whoever the person is who won the auction that night, Johnny Allred, and me. Is it for sale? Y'all wouldn't want to hear the price.
Yeah, that's got to be like the only box call besides the other 2 that's got to be the only box call, maybe signed by a U.S. president. I don't know. That seems so unusual to me.
That I know of, yes. That I know of. And like I said, your listeners would not want to hear, could it be bought? It could be bought.
What's your number? Throw it out there.
You might have a listener reach
You
out to
you might have someone buy it from you.
unless it was too sentimental.
$20,000.
Hey, we'll see. We'll put it out there to the internet.
I ain't going, and I'm old enough. What I would do is I'd pay that down on my land. My little 48.29 acres of land.
There you go. Yeah, I had to ask about that because I meant to ask about it on the last one, which, again, we lost. So it's good that we're getting to redo this. But, yeah, I was like, man, that signature looks familiar.
Did you notice that?
Little baseball card.
Oh, yeah. Talk to us
That's
about
an
that.
Alan Guthrie Topps baseball card. I get this weird phone call one day and said, "Mr. Pittman, are you the turkey caller?" I said, "Yeah." I wonder who the heck this is now. He says, "I'm a representative from Alan Guthrie Topps baseball cards." I got to say it the way I said, "Who the hell is this?" I figured one of my buddies, bugging me. And sure enough, it was them. And they said, well, we want to do a series of calls on, I said, kind of different and weird sports. Well, yeah. And I said, this is for real, isn't it? He said, yes. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, yeah. I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name who was a great trap skeet shooter who could take like 7 things and throw up in there. He's dead and gone now. I know he's in that collection, and there's some other different type of sports they did a collection on. That has been probably one of the funnest things. Of course, my next question was, they get paid anything? And he said, yeah, $1,500, but you have to bring a piece of garment with you that you have worn in the woods turkey hunting. I said, heck, I'll bring you one with blood on it. Turkey blood.
Yeah.
And we met at the CeeLo Advertisement Agency with a guard standing there. And I had to sign so many in red and so many in blue. I guess those were the quote first. This has been years ago. I forgot what year it was now. Maybe 2008-ish, something like that. And they took the garment, and I guess so many had that in it. And I still, to this day, get people that would send me a stamp, self-addressed envelope with a card in it for me to sign. And it's cool to sit there and read, because I read every note that comes in. I might not make a comment on it, but I can promise you, if you put a note in there, I'm going to read it. Now, depending on what the type of year is, if all of a sudden I start getting a bunch of people, sending it to me, it might be a month before I get it back to you, but I'll get it back to you. And don't start asking me to sign it in a particular ink. It's going to be whatever the heck I got laying on the table, okay? But the notes that come in there, the coach that sent me like a dozen cards, and I'm going, this is somebody who's just trying to do collectors, and I read the note because it's a stack of cards. It might have been 20 cards. I don't forget how many. It was a stack of cards though, and I'm not going to do that. Okay, 1 or 2 or 3, fine. And I read the note, and he says, "Dear sir, I am basically a coach, in a high school." He said, "I'm a big turkey hunter. I followed you, throughout your career." He says, "I'm trying to do some lessons, inside of my school." In other words, it all made sense in what he was doing. He was getting them for his whole team, and then I get the kid who writes about like I do, that's 8, 9, 10 years old. Me and my dad collect cards, and we found these. Would you please sign? It's just all kinds of stuff, if you know what I mean. And it's fun sitting there reading that, and it's humbling. I can tell you real quick. It's real humbling. I go, I'm just a damn redneck. That's all I am. But that's that. And then, of course, the Halls of Fame that I've been blessed to get into, Gary Mason's, National Outdoor Hall of Fame, the NWTF Outdoor Hall of Fame, the Kansas One-Shot Governor's Hall of Fame, and then the hardest one that there is, that's the Mississippi, your own home state. Which, if you're from Mississippi, go to Leland, Mississippi, and go through the Heritage Museum. It's going to take you 30 minutes to an hour unless you want to stop and read everything, and you will see so much history and how rich the state of Mississippi is with the things that have come out of, now I'm talking about my state, okay, out of the state of Mississippi. And it's all right there in that little old Heritage Museum, from old dugouts, old traps, Lucky 13 lures. Jack Dudley's in there. I'm in there. I mean, just a bunch of, you'll see so much history, and it's specifically about outdoors. It's not baseball and football and baseball. They got all that. So it's a neat little place to go to, Leland, Mississippi, the Heritage Museum.
Nice.
Perfect.
Sounds awesome.
Well, Preston, I'll say I know we take up a ton of your time, but I greatly appreciate you letting us come back over here, have a great conversation with you, and sharing a little bit of your knowledge and experience and woodsmanship with us. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of really great comments from this episode, and I'm sure people will share it as well. And I'll say this, let you play it one more time. Remind me the name of the scratch.
Pittman Game Calls website .com. You can go to. This is called The Flap and Scratch
The Flap and Scratch.
is what it's called.
I want to pick me up one, just especially when I'm hunting ponds. There ain't nothing to scratch on in pond straw.
Yep.
So
Guess what? Merry Christmas.
oh,
There you go.
I got one for you over here. If not, I'll sew you one up. How
Hey,
about
look,
that?
I get one hot off the presses.
Awesome. Well, y'all go check these out as well. And listeners, thank y'all for watching listeners, thanks for listening to the podcast. Viewers, appreciate y'all watching the podcast, and we'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsmen. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.